9/11 happened, and my dad was in the Twin Towers that day. And I can't speak for him, but I know that on my end, it really shook our whole lives and our whole family. He did come home that day, but he didn't. In a way, it was a different person coming home. Rightfully so. I can't even imagine what he saw and experienced that day, and that really just set off a different tone in our home. A lot more stress, a lot more yelling, a lot more just tension in general, which then created the anxiety in me. And someone who always likes to see people happy really struggled in that environment.
Welcome back to Flip That Shit. I am your host, Stacy, and my guest today is Michelle Gano. For those of you who have your own podcasts, today has been such a shit show. We have been trying to record for the last half hour. My podcasting studio was not working. And then we went over to Zoom and that wasn't working. And so it just is such a funny reminder that even though this might come out looking perfectly and sounding perfectly, there was such a story just trying to get to where we are, right? So I'm so happy to be able to bring this story to you guys today. If you're new to the podcast, let me just give you a quick synopsis of what this cast is about. I'm a trauma recovery coach, and I have a very specific philosophy, and that is we all walk with some sort of shit. We all walk with some sort of experience that's transformed us. But sometimes we have to get really low before we can get the gift and the challenge, right? And unfortunately, we're in that really, really low spot. We've kind of been indoctrinated to deal with our crap in solace, in silence, in a corner. We've always been told, don't air your dirty laundry. Don't tell people about what's going on, about your problems. But what that does is that creates a scenario for the person to believe that when we have problems in our life, it means that we're broken or that it's wrong. Having challenges in our life is just a natural part of life. And so what I love to do is I love to find random people, learn about their stories, share them with you so you can start to see that no matter who we pull in from off the street, someone has a story. Hopefully, today's story with Michelle will touch at least one listener that will say, oh my gosh, I've been suffering with this in silence. I don't have to do that anymore. And that person can either reach out to Michelle or reach out to someone to say, I could use some help. That's where it starts. We're in a country where there's way too many mental health issues, anxiety's off the charts, depression's off the charts, isolation is off the charts. People engage less, and the goal is to bring joy and connection back into people's lives. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest, Michelle Gano. Michelle is a mom of 3. She's a coach, she's an author, and a former teacher. And she created something called the Fixer Upper Parenting Course. And this course helps parents improve tough behavior while also helping their children feel seen, heard, and loved. She's seen it all when it comes to challenging behaviors and getting through stressful days. That's why her mission is to help parents go from feeling tired of their kids not listening to feeling proud of their child's behavior. The childhood years go by quickly, and it's time to enjoy them to the max. So welcome, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm just excited. We got ourselves figured out here and we are ready to go.
I know. It was a little challenging this morning. When you and I first met, so I always do these kind of pre-podcast powwows, you really eloquently shared with me, you kind of had 2 childhoods. One was super duper blissful and fun and amazing. And then you had this separate childhood that was very traumatic and was filled with chronic panic, stress, pressure. So I'm wondering if you can tell us, what was that? Tell us how you designate these 2 different childhoods and how did that impact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with the good. So the first one was when we were really little. I just remember my parents just being so present, and they always have been, but in even more so in that time frame, they were really present. And I just remember my dad would come home from work and he would play with us, and it was a really nice childhood. We did really well. And then 9/11 happened, and my dad was in the Twin Towers that day. And I can't speak for him, but I know that on my end, it really shook our whole lives and our whole family. He did come home that day, but he didn't. In a way, it was a different person coming home. Rightfully so. I can't even imagine what he saw and experienced that day, and that really just set off a different tone in our home. A lot more stress, a lot more yelling, a lot more just tension in general, which then created the anxiety in me. And someone who always likes to see people happy really struggled in that environment. And so, yeah, that kind of set a different experience for the second half of my childhood, unfortunately. But I'm grateful for it, and I'm sure we'll chat more about it. But it really helped me connect further with my future students and with my own children. So everything that I experienced, I can now like touch back and relate to kids in a different way because of it.
It's what we call post-traumatic growth, right?
Yeah.
So can you describe to me, was your dad, did he work in the towers? Was he, okay.
Yeah, so he was in, so it was the two Twin Towers, and then there were connecting buildings. So he was in World Trade Center 4, so it was connected to the second.
And, listen, Michelle just moved to North Carolina from the New York City area. I live right outside of New York City. I've primarily lived in New Jersey most of my life, except for when I went to college. So I was absolutely very present during 9/11. I was here in New Jersey. My community was incredibly impacted. We lost almost 30 people in 9/11. We're a big commuter town. And for those that don't live in this area, I think it's really hard for them to understand the immense impact that 9/11 had on all the people who were in that surrounding area that day. So even if they weren't in one of the major Twin Towers, okay, what happened down on the ground, what they call ground zero, was apocalyptic. And it was hard to process. And it was terrifying and it was scary. And there were people jumping out of buildings and people dying at people's footsteps. It just was a mess. And it really did have a massive ripple effect to all the outlying communities of where all of these people lived. It was hard to touch someone that didn't lose someone in that moment, or like in your case, Michelle, change someone. Right? Whether there were a lot of people I know from the area that got very sick, they ended up with a lot of issues physically because of all of the ash, but also how it changed somebody emotionally and relationally. So, how did it change your dad? What did you see as, in your opinion, the biggest shift? And how old were you?
I was in third grade. And I was aware, like I was at an age where I was aware of what was going on. So I would say, just like he wasn't joyful anymore. It wasn't like dad's coming home and playing with us. It was like dad is crying for the first time in front of me and really tense. And he was trying to process the grief in his own way. And we could just see it all right in front of us, so it was just like a lot more yelling in the house because, the poor man was trying to deal with a huge situation in his own mind. So yeah, I just remember a lot more yelling and just probably like he probably wouldn't be handling situations the way that he did then.
So did your dad seek any outside support to help him process what he experienced?
Not that I'm aware of, to be honest. So maybe behind the scenes, but to my knowledge, no. I kind of wish he did, because that could have sped up the healing for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, look, it's impossible to solo process an experience like that. First of all, it's a one in a lifetime experience, right? So it would be very hard to even lean on someone else in solidarity to talk about the experience unless they had gone through it with someone in that moment. And a lot of people shy away from even talking about it because I think that the thought process is if we don't talk about it, I can pretend like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
But yet trauma, it changes the way that we connect with the world. And it changes the way that we connect with ourselves and the people around us. So how did you end up handling this calm to chaos overnight?
Not well. I did not do it well because I started mimicking what I saw. So I was experiencing like major breakdowns and like screaming fits and like just picture the worst of the worst. And that's what I was doing. And I, like I shared, like I had anxiety and just, I really wasn't handling it well at all. And so then there are certain people like in my life that I would go to. I just remember one teacher in particular who I just saw recently again, actually, all these years later. And she just helped me a lot in school. And I would just kind of go to her room and just be like, I need a minute. Like I need to come and just sit and just be here for a second. And that was really helpful. I found a lot of comfort in teachers, which is kind of funny that I then became a teacher too.
So I have so many questions with regards to this. So, I love the fact that you've taken this experience and now are helping parents understand the behaviors that they're looking at, right? Because so often we're so quick to be punitive and so quick to punish when a child, I'm going to put in quotes, is acting out. Yes. But when nobody ever stops to ask why and what's going on with them, we're just exacerbating the problem. And so I guess there's a few questions I have. Number one, from my seat, my point of view, I feel as though if I had to take a stab at what was going on with you, it must have been very dysregulating to your system to see your father in a dysregulated state. Because that will put us into this hypervigilant mode. We don't know what to expect. Is he going to come home sad? Is he going to come home happy? Is he going to be crying? Is it my job to make him feel better? Oh my gosh, I can't make him feel better. So now we feel powerless, we'll feel helpless. So when those things happen, the amygdala part of our brain gets hijacked, right? Now it's on this on position. So the amygdala, I'm going to pull out my little brain here.
Oh, I love it.
For people that are watching on the replay. So for those of you who are listening, I have this great foam.
That's awesome.
I have this great foam brain that I keep in my office that I use with my clients because so often when we're dealing with trauma, we're dealing with a hijacked amygdala. And the amygdala is really this teeny, teeny, tiny spot right in the deep center of our brain, but it's in our alarm center. So when things feel out of control, scary, we feel helpless, powerless, hopeless, the amygdala is going to get switched on because it gives us that state of being able to be in fight or flight. But it also puts us into a state of freeze or fawn, which people don't typically talk about. And whatever state we go into is the state that we find works best for us, right? So we go into these states. This can often look like I'm freaking out, I'm acting out. And when those things happen, the frontal cortex of our brain, this yellow part, this is where all of our executive function and this is where a lot of our emotional regulation goes offline. So we cannot control our emotions. And by the way, when this little guy's going off, it goes all the way down the stem, way down to your vagus nerve, to our throat, our chest, our stomach. So you've got IBS, asthma, coronary issues, sweating issues, high blood pressure. The entire system gets hijacked. right? So in your particular situation, Michelle, what symptoms were coming up for you? How is your body being hijacked as a coping strategy for being in an environment that was uncertain and unpredictable?
Yeah, I was like obsessive perfectionist. I don't even know if that's a
So
thing.
that's a
But
fun. I mean, that's the
yeah,
fun and the ups.
yeah. So I was like trying to just control what I can control. So like if oh my gosh, this is so going back. I'm like, this is a part that I just like kind of quieted in my head, but I would like, this sounds crazy, but I would count words in a sentence. Like whenever someone would talk to me, I would try to like control, like, I don't know. This sounds so dumb.
No, please share it because it's actually, I can see exactly where you're going. And this is why it's important to share it. Because
Yeah.
there are other people that are doing this that are going to feel crazy. And I need
yeah,
them to know that they're not. So I
yeah.
need you to share what it is that
Okay,
you were doing as a coping strategy.
Yeah. So I would, one thing would be I would definitely like count words that people would say to me, I guess, just to kind of zone out. In my mind, I was trying to zone out of like, I'm not actually here. Let me just start counting instead. And then what were other things like, oh man, this is like a while ago. Yeah, that was the big one.
So let's talk about that. Somebody might see that if it was outside of your mind, like an OCD response.
Oh,
right?
definitely. Yeah, I was very definitely.
What people don't understand about OCD is look, all of the ways that we show up in the world, I'm not going to say all, most of the ways that we show up in the world as adults or as toddlers, even, or elementary school kids, are not necessarily something that we brought into the world with us. It's a learned coping strategy to survive a circumstance that's leaving us with feelings that we don't know how to process. It's leaving us with feelings that we don't know how to verbalize. Maybe we're pre-verbal. And so what we do is, or we just are young, we're in elementary school. And so because we can't express what we're feeling and we don't have the coping skills yet to know how to soothe ourselves when we're feeling out of control, powerless, helpless, unseen, unheard, unimportant, insignificant. And in your case, the duration of frequency and intensity are high because it's the constancy in your home. And it's coming into you at 8, 9 years old, when pre 8, 9 years old, you didn't need those coping strategies. So now you've gone overnight of all of this has changed. I don't know how to cope with this. My dad's not coping with it well. We still haven't even gotten yet to how your mom's coping with it, which is my next question, and the other people in your family. So we will very intelligently, very brilliantly use our mind to come up with something that makes us feel better. And feeling in control feels better. Right? So it's not this crazy thing that I did. It's actually this brilliant, super smart coping strategy that an 8-year-old's mind came up with to create some sort of resemblance of control because everything feels out of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so important for listeners to understand that because I cannot stand it when people come to me and say, I'm broken. Babe, you were never broken. You have come up with a phenomenal coping strategy, or you can't find the coping strategy to help you survive a circumstance that's abnormal. So you are doing what is the most normal you can do with what you've got, given an abnormal circumstance. And so when people come to me with that, instead of focusing on how to fix someone, we're really focusing on what was the unusual circumstance? What were the brilliant coping strategies you could or could not come up with? And how do we finally deal with those emotions so then we can move forward? Right? So you said you found solace in a teacher.
Yeah.
Were you able to find any solace at home with your mom? With any of that. So are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I just, I found more comfort in teachers at that point. I think, I just felt a little removed. I felt misunderstood at that point. And again, like as an adult, I love now looking back on it, because I'm like, in the moment, I was like, oh, they don't love me. They don't care about me. But it's like, okay, they were coping. They didn't even know how to handle it, And so it's nice to now view it from an adult perspective and be like, okay, they were going through their own shit and couldn't help me with my shit.
I mean, think about it. You're having this reaction, but how was your mom dealing with the fact that her husband changed overnight?
Yeah. She, I think, was just she was trying to be the glue, just holding it all together. But I just remember her being super emotional and like allowing the behavior, I think with me, like if my husband or I were to ever like act up in a way or do something, we'd be like, hey, like, what's going on? Let me help you.
I think it's an unusual circumstance because she clearly knew he had been incredibly traumatized.
Exactly.
Right. So there's this kind of like eggshell tiptoeing.
Very much so. Yeah.
Because you respect and have compassion for, but you also don't know how to deal with it. And look, this was in 2001. This was 22 years ago, which is so hard to believe.
Talked about emotional needs.
Exactly. Like we're now really, I feel like just in the last 5 years, pulling the veil of this bullshit stigma off of mental health, and it's still sticking like Velcro. Mm-hmm. So 22 years ago.
Yeah, this wasn't conversation.
This wasn't. And even if people were seeking help, I can probably say, because I can see it today, there probably wouldn't have even been enough trauma-informed specialists in order to handle the wave of trauma that was over this area.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you have siblings? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother and a sister.
Okay. And how did they cope? Because everyone copes with these kinds of things very separately and differently.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I kind of blacked this out of my memory, just in general, this whole time frame.
Yeah.
But I do remember them. That's a tough question, honestly.
You can't answer it. It's okay.
Yeah, I can't really, like, I don't want to put words to it if I'm not confident in it.
Yeah.
I feel like what my perception was at the time was that like I think they were just trying to like people please and just like kind of keep my dad calm, keep my mom calm. And I was more of like the fighter, where I would like challenge it and be like, why are you screaming? And now, and then that would then heighten it, So I was definitely like the odd man out in a way with how I was handling everyone in general.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this earlier. There are 4 F's when our amygdala gets hijacked. So there are 4 F's that happen when we're under threat, right? Whether it's chronic or acute. Fight. I'm the fighter. I know that. Yeah. Fight, flight, right? So now you've got the adrenaline of someone that's like running from a bear. So you might just check out and flee, or however you do it. Freeze, which we don't talk enough about, which is just absolute total analysis paralysis, when your amygdala is so hijacked that everything just goes offline, right? All decision making, all emotional regulation, all prioritizing, planning, like all the things that we need in order to get through the day. Looks a lot like depression, right? And then fawn, which is what you were just talking about, which is probably the least discussed. And fawn is extreme people pleasing and lack of boundary setting. And it's done in order to keep the peace or to try to make someone that's dysregulated regulated. That's the thought process. How can I get that person calm? How can I get that? Because if that person's calm, I'm going to be safe. Or if that person's calm, we have the peace, ... then I can feel regulated. Right. So is it fair to say that as you got older, you were able to look back and look at how you responded and see what the behaviors were that were coming out of you at 8 and 9 years old, and recognize there was nothing wrong with you. This was a coping strategy and you didn't know how to cope.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And I think I saw that a lot when I was a teacher, because when I was in the classroom, every year I would get all of those kids that the other teachers didn't want. And when I say that, I mean those like behavior kids, and they would just pile them in into my classroom, and it was emotionally draining, but it was the best thing for the kids and for me, because in a way I was coping as I was helping them cope. And that's really when a lot of my growth happened too, because I would see the kids struggling with whatever situation was at home, and I would help them or just address them in the way that I wish someone addressed me. And that's when the magic happened in my classroom. And like, if you were to walk into my room, the feeling was just different than any other classroom. And I can't explain it more than that. Like, there was just such a deep connection between me and the kids and the kids, like just with the activities that I would do and the conversations we would have. And I was never a teacher who said, "Oh, we can't talk about that here." Like, I was like, "Get down here. We're sitting down and we're talking about it."
And what grade was this, Michelle?
So I taught kindergarten and third grade. So in both grades, obviously the third grade, I was able to do a little bit more like deep conversations with that, but honestly, the younger kids too. And even something you said before, I thought about, I love the quote. I always would think of this when I was teaching: the kids who need the most love show it in the most unloving ways. And so whenever a student was acting out, I wasn't like, "Oh my God, what's his problem?" I was like, "Okay, what happened that caused that?" And then that's when I did my deep dive and figure out what it was. And so that's really where it all stemmed from.
I know you said it would be hard to put into like that. You can't really explain it. It was just a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. But can you kind of try to paint? I'm going to ask you to try to paint a picture for a scenario, mainly because I'm hoping that there'll be parents that are struggling with their children's behaviors. Let's just call it K through third grade, right?
Yeah.
Who are so frustrated. And they don't have this lens that they've only been looking at the problem through one particular lens. What I'm hoping is that you'll give them a different lens to look at the problem through.
I would love that.
Okay. So can you give us a scenario or paint us a picture and give them that lens?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I found the most helpful with kids and people in general, is the whole how I feel loved activity. So that's something that I'm sure we'll chat more about after. But I was noticing when you're a teacher, you have 20 plus kids in your class, right? And everyone's coping differently. Everyone's got their own needs. And I was like, how in the heck am I going to truly address each one of their needs and help them feel loved? Because to me, I didn't care if they knew fractions. I wanted them to feel loved by me when they were in my room, because I knew at home there were struggles with a lot.
Can I just add, when they don't feel seen, heard, significant, connected, it will affect how they learn.
Of course. Yes.
So if you can't bypass this part. And I actually just had a conversation with our middle school about this, that they're upside down because they're bypassing the precursor to why a child is having a hard time learning. Mm-hmm. So you were doing it the right way, what I'm trying to encourage our school to do, which is look at the child holistically.
Absolutely.
So what were you seeing?
Yeah. So what I did was I had a quick piece of paper for them. And this could be a conversation. It could be a writing prompt, whatever you want to do with your own children at home. But complete the sentence: I feel loved by my mom when she, or I feel loved by my dad when he, I feel loved by my teacher when she or he. And that simple prompt I loved reading the responses because I was like, okay. And I don't know if you know The Love Languages by Gary Chapman, one
Yeah.
of my favorite books. And so I recommend that to everyone listening. But I was easily able to identify, okay, this person needs physical touch. So if they're ever feeling like upset or I could just give them a hug and they'll feel good. This person, oh, they need praise. They need those like affirmations, right? And so I was able to identify what would help them. And that simple phrase really helps. And so even with my own son right now and my own kids, they're super little, but it still works. So if he's ever upset or having a tantrum or something's going on in his little worlds that he can't calm down, I'll give him a choice and I'll say, okay, Braden, do you want me to give you a hug right now? Or do you want to go play with your toys with me? Because that's quality time or physical touch. And so I'm not saying, hi, do you want quality time? I'm putting it in
Right.
language that works with him, right? And he can understand. And so that I saw really helped with a lot of the kids in my classroom and now at home as well.
So I have a few things going through my mind. One is, let's just say, for example, you have toddlers and young, elementary school children. And the house is just chaos all the time. And there's just like constant behavior. It's almost impossible to sit down and tease out a behavior. It's just a constancy, right? What do you do for that parent? What kind of recommendations do you have for a parent that feels like, I think a lot of parents at that age, with that age group feel like they're drowning?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, oh my goodness, my entire course addresses that.
So can you talk about your course? Let's talk about it.
So there are a lot of things you can do. And it's funny, I'm kind of laughing as you say that, because that's literally me. So my kids, just so the listeners understand where I'm coming from as a parent, is I have almost 4, almost 2, and an 8-month-old right now. So we are very much in the toddler little age group, right? And so for me, what my focus is with my kids right now is just teaching them about feelings and making them and helping them use the feeling words when they are frustrated, because that's going to be the base of what is needed. So even if you are like, oh man, my kids aren't toddlers anymore, you could still do that. And you're going to start this whole journey by modeling it yourself. So when I'm frustrated, I make sure that I am saying, I feel blank. Right. And so I'll be like, I feel so frustrated right now, and I need to calm my body. So please give me a minute. And that's the whole thing. Like I did that as a teacher and as a parent, and modeling that coping strategy is like really powerful for them, because then
when a parent is dysregulated and not coping well, what's that teaching a child?
It's definitely setting them off the way that I was when I was younger, right? So if they can learn from you, then that's really powerful. Like I had a student who had really bad anger issues, and I was like, hello, I was there one time. And so I helped him by doing that. And I would always model it. And then one day, finally, like weeks into this, or even months, he all of a sudden, I overheard him helping another child who was crying and walking them through the same steps, like word for word, what I would say to him. And I was just
Can you share? Do you remember what that was that you shared with him?
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty much the same thing, just saying like, okay, I need to, like, I feel, just address the feeling. I feel upset because what triggered it? And then I need to, or I would like to like take 3 deep breaths right now, And so like addressing the feeling and then doing something to calm your body. I need to calm my body. I like that phrase a lot, because even my son, who's like almost 4, he uses that all the time. And it's funny because even when someone else gets upset, he's like, you need to calm your body. Let me help you.
So this is so good. If you were to model this, and I'm doing this for the benefit of a parent listening. Yeah. If you were to model this and say, I need to calm my body, do you then follow it up with, and I calm my body by, and then telling them and showing them how they do it?
Yeah. And I'll even like have them join me if they want. So, and I'm thinking as a teacher too. And so I would say, I really need to calm my body. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. If anyone else is feeling like this right now, you can join me. But if you're not, just please give me a minute to do this so that I can feel better. So that simple prompt can make a huge difference.
So you have this course, which is phenomenal. How long does it take? Is it a self-paced course?
It's self-paced, and it's, I kept it, I'm a busy parent. And so I kept it as simple and like easy to use as possible. So there are 10 lessons, and each lesson is a video that's 10 or less minutes long, usually less. And then I give printable resources. So it's not just like, hey, this would be a cool thing to try. It's like, okay, now go print it and do it with your kids. So it's all different things, like we're talking about just feeling loved and how to love other people well. But then it's also very behavioral, because I found that a lot of kids need structure in their little world, just to be able to cope with the day and transitions. And that's when a lot of the tantrums in my own home will happen, when I'm seeing, okay, transitioning from A to B. And so I use a lot of visuals, so charts and just simple tools that don't take too long for parents to do, but can be really powerful in just creating a specific tone that you want to set in your.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you the question because I see this so often. And it's funny because I'm 52 this year, but I have a much younger sister. So her kids are much younger. My kids are 18 and 14. Her kids are 3 and 5. So it's like the perfect conversation. And I'm actually having dinner with her tonight. So I'll be dropping your name. But I know, because I have these conversations with her often, there's a sense of frustration and sometimes guilt and even shame when we don't feel we're doing it right, or when we perceive, this is more important, that everybody else has their shit together and I'm the one that doesn't. Right. So the question I have for you, because I think it's really important, again, for these parents to hear this. Do you ever lose your shit? Like,
oh, completely.
Okay.
Why do you think I created the course? To help other people not lose it as often.
Right. But it's so important because, it's like Martha Stewart showing the perfect turkey, but what she doesn't show is the 50 times she made the turkey and it turned out like shit. Yeah.
Well,
right?
the best thing about I just love what I do, because my son is one of those kids in the classroom that the teachers would lose their mind on. And
I know, share, explain what that would look like.
Yeah, so he's definitely the kid that I've had so many students like him. And now I understand why I had those students, because it prepped me for my own child. And I always laugh. I'm like, I can't believe I birthed one. I birthed one of these. I know every tip and trick, but I birthed him myself. What the hell? And so, but now that's really when this course was created, because I was like, okay, I'm losing my shit daily. And so I need to address this. And I've done it before in the classroom. Will it work at home? And I was seeing it quickly working at home. And I was like, oh my God, this actually can help.
Do you have a sense of why he was losing his shit?
Yeah. So we have a lot of little transitions in our life. I mean, if you think about it, he's turning 4 next month and he has 2 little babies following him. Hello.
That's a big challenge.
Big one, so I think that could be a huge thing for his little body. And he loves them to death. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a shift in attention, a shift in sharing everything. So
I think the shift in attention is not to be ignored, and it's so interesting because, I primarily work with women 40 to 60, 40 to 70, though I have guys on my caseload too, but very often I'll hear, I've had a few situations where somebody said, my sibling hates me. I'll say, where are you in the group of siblings? So I'm number 2. There's 3 of us, or maybe there's just 2 of us, but my sister hates me. Well, why do you think that? She just does. And I said, and then I go, what's the age difference? Mm-hmm. And this particular woman goes, 11 months.
Okay, there we go.
And I said, listen, your mom was already exhausted from pregnancy. And now she's extra exhausted because 8 weeks postpartum, she's pregnant. And now you're coming into the picture and she's only 11 months old. I said, it's not to be dismissed that there's no rational brain development till we're like, it's really not fully done till we're like 10, 12, 13. So the only thing that a child can go off of at that age, 11 to, 11 months to 4 years old, is how they feel. So when we see this new being come in, a natural response to this unnatural thing in their environment would be, well, I wasn't enough. Well, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I wasn't enough. They needed another one. They needed more. We all know that a lot of children are brought into the world out of pure desire to love, right? And to parent and to do what we do. But we rarely look at it from the lens of the toddler or the infant and what that experience must feel like and look like to them in that moment. And then we're questioning why they're hitting their baby sister.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Complete sense.
Yeah. People need to really think about, my husband is one of 10 children.
Dear God.
Dear God. He's one of 10 children. He is a twin. There are 2 sets of twins in that pack.
Oh my God.
Him and his twin are 8 and 9 out of 10.
Oh.
And I remember one of my sister-in-laws going, growing up in this big family, I always thought it was like so amazing growing up. And she was number 4 out of the 10. She goes, but as I've gotten older and I have my own children, I'm going back and saying, God, none of us got the attention we really, not that we want, that we needed. That we needed. We need these things to know that we belong.
Yeah.
Right? We only need a few things as young kids. Feed me, keep me hydrated, keep me safe, and let me know that I belong and that I matter and that I'm significant in the world. Because that determines whether or not I believe I'm lovable. I'm not saying this to make any parent feel bad, but you have to stop for a second. I have 2 kids. And I know what the behaviors were. My kids are adopted. When my second one came home and my 5-year-old, who had been the only kid for 4.5 years, was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Send this kid back. Because now you're taking the attention off of me. And it's a process. And what I would say, and I'm curious to what you would say, is it's not to be ignored. Don't punish them because they're feeling less than in that moment. Try to give them some way to express how they're feeling so they can feel understood. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, you explained it very well. So I would definitely do that with my son, especially just because I'm always trying to give him on the good days, right? Because we're all going to have bad days, but help them, just like help him feel that he has my attention. And something that is really important is like, we like to do little like mommy and Braden time or daddy and Braden time, or even like yesterday, he's like, can we do something special tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, of course. What do you want to do? And I'll give him a few choices. And so I do try to make sure that he has that time, even in the crazy, lives that we have, right? Because so many parents listening and myself were like, okay, how do I have special time with each kid? That sounds beautiful, wonderful. But it's like, it doesn't have to be long. It could be 5 minutes. And I'm big on timers, setting timers, just because it's a good visual for kids, because then it helps with transitions. So I'll grab a timer and I'll be like, hey, do you want to play with these cars with me for 5 minutes? And then we get to go bring the girls in too, because I have 2 other little girls. And so that little thing makes a big difference. And so knowing that he has my undivided attention during that time can help him, like, it just helps his behavior for the rest of the day, because he knows, okay, I had my time with mommy, and it helps. And honestly, with a child like that, every day it's effort. It's not like I'm just sitting back being like, I'm using all these pretty charts and it's working perfectly.
Right.
It works with him, but it takes effort on my part for it to work.
And would you say part of the effort is the consistency of it?
It's the piece. Yes, that's the piece.
Right.
Definitely. Because
2 questions.
Then they're going to see that and sense it and be like, well, it's okay, fine. She's doing this for today, but that's not actually helping,
All right. I have 2 questions. They both start with a T. Okay. Two topics. The first one is teachers, right? Because you can be doing this at home. You're saying he is that kid in the classroom that's giving the teachers a run for the money, right? How do you give any of this advice to the teachers or suggestions to the teachers? Or are you, when the teachers come to you and say, we have a problem, what's your response to that?
It's funny that you're bringing this up because this is literally the conversation that I'm having this week, because in my mind, my son hasn't been to school yet because he's only
because you just moved.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. So now, since I moved, I was like, okay, schooling. What are my options here? Where are we going here? And so he's obviously going to start pre-K in September, and I am a mess right now. And this is so real time because in my mind, I'm like, do I homeschool him? Because then I know he's going to get what I gave my kids, my students. Do I put him in a school, try it out, see what happens? And so I'm really on the fence. I think I'm going to try and see how it goes, because I think that would be good for him and good for me to almost, I can't, again, control. I can't control, like he has to learn from other people too. It can't just be me. And so, so what I'm planning on doing, and we'll see how it all plays out, is absolutely just having a conversation with the teacher, kind of like ours, and be like, hey, I was always the teacher with these kids in the class, and I know that he's going to give you a tough time at times. And so here's some things that worked with me. Please reach out if you ever need any suggestions, because I'm happy to share what I do at home. And I'll keep it like that because I don't want to come in strong. But if I'm hoping they would then receive that well. And I mean, only time will tell. So we'll see. I have a lot of.
It's fascinating.
So even if I can just share a little bit in small chunks to not overwhelm, then I think that would be really helpful.
I'm going back and thinking about when my oldest son, who's now a senior in high school, was in 2nd grade. We were having a crisis at home. We had a family business that was imploding because of what was happening on Wall Street. This was 2012-ish, but it had been this downward spiral since Lehman Brothers had closed. We were collateral damage. And all of these conversations about closing this business were happening around our kitchen table, even though it was a family business. My dad would be there, my brother would be there. And there were some very uncomfortable, very heated conversations, a lot of stress. And the business finally closed under duress. And the first thing I did, we closed it on a Monday, is I went to the school on a Tuesday and I asked for a meeting with the principal. And I said, this is what's going on at home. And he's not showing me, I'm not seeing any result of that in him, because I think he's fawning a little bit. He knows to keep the peace at this moment, but it's possible he's going to come here and have a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of concerns that he doesn't know how to express. And there's a potential that he's going to act out. He's never in all his years of school has ever acted out. He's never had behavior issues. He's not he's just not a behavior kid. So I wasn't even giving that excuse. I was preempting. Should you see something different?
Let me know.
Please do not be punitive. You need to know that there's something he's reacting to, and I need you to call me. Yeah. And I think that too often families are not sharing with the person that's spending the 8 hours a day with the child.
Yeah.
And saying, listen, we've got a death going on in the family. We've got a divorce going on in the family. I have a chronically ill child at home. Whatever it is, it takes a village.
Yeah.
And if we're not informing them and they're having behavior issues, the first thing that unfortunately happens is the shaming game.
Mm-hmm.
And shame is really toxic.
Yeah.
And it's the opportunity for a child to create a belief about themselves that is not productive.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a difficult child. I'm a problem child. I'm whatever. So if anyone's listening and they're in that space, it's okay to go and share.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there's some abnormalcy happening right now. We're in this kind of uncontrollable environment. Can you keep me abreast if you're seeing anything?
Yeah.
Versus letting it come to a head. So that was the one thing. It was the teachers in school.
And I think that's a good point too, because a lot of the parents that I dealt with as a teacher, a lot of them were more of the like, oh, not my child.
Mm.
And that was really hard because it was like, okay, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. It's like I'm with them 8 hours a day. And so that was really hard. So I think just the fact that I will be very self-aware and aware of his behaviors and his needs, like that's going to help already with the situation, because I can say, hey, I've tried this at home. It works. If you want to do it at home, or if you have your own way, great. I will complement it on my end so that it's successful, so that it's consistent.
I mean, I still have this problem now we have ADHD in our home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's not a behavior. Thank goodness we're not dealing with all of that and behaviors, but it is the way that they do school that creates more work for the school.
Right.
So they don't want to do it.
Yes.
So they'd rather blame and shame the kid for not being able to do it.
Yeah.
It's a big fucking problem and it has to stop.
Yes.
Because it's the parents in the back end that are them picking up the pieces.
Mm.
The other topic is technology. So when you were talking about, even if it's 5 minutes with a kid or this dedicated alone time with a child, which from my seat, I can see what you're doing. It's like, let me give them some time to remind them they're important, significant, seen, heard, understood. People don't understand how traumatic it is when children don't feel that way. Right. And that's primarily where I work. I work with adults who didn't feel that way as children. What I see so often, and I'm a culprit of it, I'm not going to say that I'm not, is when we're in this time alone, all of a sudden, hold on. It's just one text. Or I just got to see what's happening. I'm just waiting to get back. Or we're looking at social media. Or even better, let me take a picture of what you're doing so I can remind myself I'm a good mom because we're spending time together and I can post it for everybody else to see. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Favorite conversation. Okay. So I've got some strong opinions here. No. Social media, if I could do without, I would. And I kind of do. So the only reason why I am on social media, I do not post about my kids at all. Maybe here and there, but for the most part, do not post because of what you said. It's a comparison game, in my opinion. It's a comparison game, and it's to make yourself feel better about they commented that this was such a cute idea. I know it was. Oh my gosh, it was so fun. No, I know it's a cute idea. I don't need someone to see it. Sorry, I'm kind of strong about this one.
No, I love it. Let's go.
And then as far as my phone being out during the day, so I don't really look at my phone all day. So I will rack up all the texts. And then at night when the kids are in bed, that's when I answer people. So unless you call me, I will answer a phone call. I don't answer texts during the day. And that I'm pretty firm about, unless something obviously here and there I'll answer, but I don't want them to see me staring at my phone because I know that that's not good for them, in my opinion, again. So I kind of just made that rule in my own head because it helps me be more present. And I think that's really important.
That's the part.
And the biggest thing that I did do to help me with that is I deleted Instagram and Facebook from my phone so that I can only access it when I log onto my computer. So it has to be a more intentional, like activity. And then that's when I'm on it. But as far as my phone, I do try to just keep it in one spot during the day. I'll check it. Like if they're like, I don't know, busy playing, I'll just do a quick check. I'll read some text, but then I'll be like, okay, I'll answer that later. And just know what I need to get back to. And that to me has been just like a big difference in our home, because I do see some families who stare at their phone all day, or and sometimes you have to for work. And I'll be very clear, like some days I have to work and I am on technology a lot more than others. So it's not like this perfect thing every day, but in the time that I'm with them, I'm just trying to be as present as possible, because I know that that's going to help their development the most.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So I want people to know how they can get in touch with you. I know you have your course. Mm-hmm. Do you also offer coaching, like one-to-one coaching?
I do, because I really, I'll be honest, I have a few people right now, but I want to grow in that area, because I've been a coach before in other ways. And that is where like my sweet spot is. Yeah. So I just love working with people one-on-one, because the course is awesome, because it's very like self-explanatory. I walk you through it all and I give you the tools you need. But I always love having one-on-one support anyways, because I mean, every child is different. Every family is different. So that is definitely helpful.
So if someone wants to get in touch with you for the course, how do they find your course?
The course is course.fixerupperparenting.com.
Okay. And how about for coaching?
Yeah, so I would say email me on that. So it's Michelle@fixerupperparenting.com. And you can just email me directly just to see how we can work together a little bit more closely.
Amazing. This has been such a good topic. I knew it was going to be a good interview, because I remember when you and I had met earlier. And I just, whenever we can talk about kids and development and what it looks like, I think there's a benefit to the listener, because it really all starts there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really all starts there. So this has been such a pleasure. I'm glad we were finally able to make it work. We had so many technical difficulties at the beginning. You mentioned earlier, I love to help people when, let's just say hypothetically, as we round out, all of this spoke to someone, but they're like not in a position right now where they can afford a course or afford a coach. I love to offer no and low cost resources, because when I had my breakdown, I did not have the money and I had to really rely on no and low cost resources. So do you have a particular book or something free that you can offer people to take a look at, to just at least explore?
Well, it's funny you say that. So yes, I'm writing a book.
Cool.
So I've published other books, but I want to write one specifically about the course and this topic. And so, yeah, that's in the works. So it's not out yet, but it will definitely be soon, especially if you're airing this later on in the summer. Mm-hmm. It will be very close. And yeah, so we just did the move, and now I'm like, okay, book time. So
awesome.
So we'll have a book. And then also just on social media, I have short videos that I do each day, just trying to give little tips here and there about just all of these different topics.
And where can people find you on social media?
Yep. So Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are the best ones. So Instagram is Michelle_Gano. So my name, and then same with YouTube as well. So it's all linked together.
Awesome. And how about this, How I Feel Loved activity?
Yep. So that's right on the website. A pop-up will come up. But then if it doesn't, then there's if you scroll down, there's a link for the free resource. So you could just put your email address in there, and you won't get spammed with a lot of stuff, because I'm being present with my kids. I'm not going to be sending you emails all the time.
Well, this has been phenomenal. Michelle Gano, Gano, Fixer Upper Parenting. Go check out her course. It's course.fixerupperparenting.com. Follow her on Instagram, follow her YouTube channel. If it speaks to you, you are not alone. Even Michelle is dealing with the shit, and she is here to share with you how to deal with it. So thank you so much. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I know a lot of people are going to resonate with it.
Thank you so much. I sure hope so.
Thank you. And for those of you who are interested in hearing all of my podcast episodes, you can go to wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Flip That Shit or my name, Stacy Uhrig. Thanks for listening.